Today we're going to look at a video from Robert Reich. For those who don't know Robert Reich, he's a guy that teaches political science or policy or whatever at University of Berkeley. He's a well-respected intellectual amongst people on the left. He often talks about economics. This is his YouTube channel where he has over 340,000 subscribers. This video in particular has 67,000 views, was put up on March 29th of this year. It's called, Here's What It's Like Having $100 Billion versus $1 billion. And I'm responding to this because someone requested that I take a look at this video. So let's check it out.
The word billionaire didn't even exist until 1844. 50 years later, we got multi-billionaire. And for the next 127 years, that was enough.
Now, let's take a look at some of the billionaires he's referencing here really quick. We have J.D. Rockefeller. And for those who don't know, J.D. Rockefeller, he made his billions of dollars by consolidating the oil refining industry and making it much safer and much more efficient as a result, driving down consumer prices, which the masses benefited from.
Multi-billionaire.
We also have Sam Walton, similar story, made his billions of dollars by starting a business like Walmart's, which drove down prices, which made goods and services, namely food, clothing, and a bunch of other goods, more affordable. This guy was a genius at pricing and offering promotions and discounts. Very inspiring American success story, Sam Walton.
For the next 127 years.
Also got Bill Gates, made his billions of dollars by helping revolutionize the personal computer industry, driving down the price of personal computers to the point where most American families could afford a personal computer.
That was enough.
And then we have George Lucas, Mark Cuban, and Oprah Winfrey, but especially George Lucas. I can understand why people take J.D. Rockefeller and Sam Walton for granted. We're taught in public schools that that people like J.D. Rockefeller, they were robber barons, and they were operating big scary monopolies. There's also a lot of memes and other forms of propaganda that demonize people like J.D. Rockefeller and Sam Walton, but George Lucas, I feel like is easy to see the amount of value he created. How did George Lucas become a billionaire? He became a billionaire by taking ideas in his head, like Death Stars and Millennium Falcons and Jedi and Darth Vader and Wookiees and all that cool stuff, and putting it on pieces of paper and turning that into an epic movie trilogy. And he also, George Lucas managed to finagle himself a favorable merchandising deal with 20th Century Fox, a major movie studio. And that's how George Lucas became a billionaire, by taking ideas in his head and turning it into this wealth of intellectual property that has since spanned many movies, action figures, VHS sales, movie ticket sales over a span of 4+ decades. And say what you will about George Lucas. I know a lot of people have a lot of problems with him for a variety of reasons, but George Lucas, he is undoubtedly one of the all-time American success stories. But he had the audacity to make money. So now he's one of the greedy billionaires.
But in 2020, while the working class faced near record unemployment during the pandemic, the wealthiest Americans faced a different problem. Some of them had gotten so rich, there was no longer a word to describe just how rich they were. That's why today I want to bring you...
All right, so notice what he's doing here, Robert Reich. He's making it sound like all the people who maybe lost their job, maybe lost their small business during the pandemic, they lost it as a result at the expense of billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos increasing their net worth, when we know the real culprit of the unemployment, of the suffering, was local and state governments imposing lockdowns, which resulted in people losing their jobs, jeopardizing their small business. Remember, a lot of people at the time were applauding this. Remember, people like Patton Oswalt were saying, "Oh well, Anne Frank, she stayed in an attic for 2 years. If she can do that, then you can sit at home and watch Netflix for a few weeks. Stop complaining about how you can't go to Fuddruckers." What did you guys think was going to happen when you shut down the economy and essentially force people to turn to companies like Amazon, which was started by Jeff Bezos? Because people, they can't go to Amazon's competition anymore, so they're more reliant on companies like Amazon. They're more reliant on big tech companies like Amazon, who also provides streaming entertainment. Other companies like Netflix, Apple. Not to mention the trillions of new dollars that was injected into the economy, a lot of which went to the stock market, which may have inflated the net worth for a lot of these billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. What the fuck did you guys think was going to happen? I guess it's Jeff Bezos' fault that people may have lost work during the pandemic.
There was no longer a word to describe just how rich they were. That's why today I want to bring you one of the newest additions to the English language, centibillionaire.
Surprised he's not going with oligarch, kind of like what his buddy Bernie Sanders has been doing with tweets like this, making it sound like billionaires in America are the exact same as oligarchs in Russia. Is that the case, Bernie? People like Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, who become rich largely by creating a new business, creating new products that they sell on whatever's left of the free market. They're the same as oligarchs in Russia who get wealthy by schmoozing with goons like Vladimir Putin, who's well known for confiscating businesses and industries in Russia and doling out favors and businesses to his buddies. Really, Bernie? Is America as bad as Russia? Is that what you're saying? As if we don't have as if we still don't have a large degree of consent of the governed in the United States? Is that what you believe? If that's the case, why do you keep running for president? And why do you keep rerunning for Senate? Because, hey, elections are hopeless. It's all rigged by the oligarchs. I know that's kind of besides the point. I'm responding to Bernie instead of Robert Reich. I've been looking for a reason to bring in that point, and they're friends, so why not?
People with $100 billion or more. Now, what's it like being one of history's first centibillionaires? It's hard to even imagine, but let's try it by comparing them to the less fortunate, by which I mean just regular billionaires. If you're a regular billionaire, you can afford a private jet.
Cool.
If you're a centibillionaire, you can afford a brand new Gulfstream jet every single day for more than 10 years. Not sure what you do with a new Gulfstream jet every day, but maybe give one to each of your closest 4,000 friends.
So is this what Robert Reich thinks that, centibillionaires are doing with their money? And I'm going to elaborate more on this later, but this is pretty telling. He's making it sound like these centibillionaires, they just have $100 billion in a vault somewhere that they can just spend on whatever they want. But it's also amusing that he used, Elon Musk as an example for this. Like, oh, Elon Musk, why would he want a fleet of Gulfstream jets when he's involved with a space program and is trying to get to Mars? Gulfstream jet, that's below Elon Musk at this point.
A regular billionaire would struggle to buy their own professional baseball team. It's sad, I know, but a centibillionaire could easily buy every team in the entire Major League.
I guess they theoretically could, although Major League Baseball probably would never let that happen. And again, it's interesting that this is where Robert Reich goes with this, because there is some legitimate points to talk about when talking about billionaires and professional sports like Major League Baseball. All of, whom I think most, if not all of the owners in Major League Baseball are billionaires. Meanwhile, a lot of the stadiums in Major League Baseball are funded by local taxpayers. This is a point. This is a legitimate point that Robert Reich can bring up. Like, yeah, see, look, there are billionaires who are milking the taxpayers. Of course, this is often justified because, hey, it's going to stimulate the local economy. It's going to create jobs. It's great for the community and a bunch of other collectivist gobbledygook that Robert Reich buys into. That's probably why he's not going there with this. Often, also, what happens in a lot of these cities is that the owners will threaten to move the team if the local taxpayers don't foot the bill for their new stadium, when we should be telling these billionaires to, why don't you build your own fucking stadium?
If you're a regular billionaire, you can donate to your alma mater and get your name on a building. If you're a centibillionaire, you could single-handedly give every teacher in America an $8,000 raise for 5 straight years.
Yeah, it's the billionaires' fault that teachers are not paid enough in this country. Now, in all seriousness, I actually did a recent video on this titled, Are We Proud of Public Education in America?, where I talk about how a variety of school districts in America have billion-dollar-plus budgets for public education. New York City alone, this is according to the Department of Education of New York City. This is according to their own website. As you can see, for this year, they have a budget of $38 billion, which according to the U.S. Census, I mentioned this in the video I just mentioned, New York City, they spend $28,000 per student per year on public education, and I covered a lot of other districts. A lot of these districts have generous budgets for their public education systems. They spend anywhere between $15,000 to $28,000 per student per year on public education. A lot of these teaching staffs, they're unionized. A lot of the workforces in these districts are unionized. And apparently that's all not enough. As I mentioned in the other video, like the public school in a lot of areas of the United States, they're a wet dream for people like Robert Reich. They're heavily taxpayer funded, generously funded. Government has a near monopoly in these areas. The workforces are unionized, and it's still not enough. As I said, they always need a little more. Like with how George Carlin talked about religion and churches, they always need a little more money. Same thing could be said about economic fascists like Robert Reich. They always need a little more. Apparently, again, it's the centibillionaires' fault that teachers are not paid enough. Also, public education, especially in New York City, which I just mentioned, over half the students are not proficient in stuff like reading, writing, and mathematics. So are we proud of are we proud of these results? But it's the centibillionaires' fault, you guys.
Blow it out your ass.
Of course, that's not all you could do. $100 billion is enough to wipe out all the medical debt in the United States.
Yeah, and medical debt would probably be much less of an issue if we actually had a free market in healthcare and medicine. But it's also worth noting, as I mentioned earlier, Robert Reich brings up Mark Cuban as an example of a billionaire earlier in this video. Mark Cuban started his own online pharmacy to make medication more affordable, to compete on the market and offer consumers lower prices on medicine. I don't think this is the solution. I think there's a lot of government intervention in medicine. As I've talked about in previous videos, notably my video, how the FDA saved Americans from affordable drugs.
You absolutely suck!
And another video, how the government saved Americans from affordable insulin. And I know it can be a little self-serving to keep referencing other videos I have made on these topics, but one, I want you, if you're new to my channel, to check out my other stuff where I bring in a lot of receipts. And two, if I had to go off on these tangents, I'd have to go off on all these half-hour tangents to respond to all of Robert Reich's bullshit. We'd be here all day. But yeah, Mark Cuban, he's trying to make a difference in the healthcare industry. What has Robert done to make healthcare more affordable? Was he one of these cheerleaders for the quote-unquote Affordable Care Act, which has been in play for, 8 years now? How is that working, Robert?
Or provide permanent shelter for every homeless person in America.
Yeah, now this is rich. Homelessness. Homelessness is a problem. Housing costs are a problem in America. Of course, Robert Reich isn't really helping on this front. Robert Reich got exposed a couple years ago for trying to prevent the construction of new low-income housing in his area because it might threaten the charm of his beloved community.
What an asshole!
Of course, a reason why housing is so expensive in places like California and New York is because of government intervention, which prevents the building of new supply to meet the demand. Not to mention when the federal government has tried to intervene to make housing more affordable for low-income families, like Bill Clinton and George W. Bush did during the 90s and early 2000s, it created a housing bubble, which eventually led to the 2008 financial crisis.
Well done.
Or by COVID-19.
If you want to make housing more affordable and make homelessness less of a problem, here's an idea. Deregulate finance, housing, and construction, especially in places like California, and you'll see prices come down.
Permanent shelter for every homeless person in America. Or buy COVID-19 vaccines for the entire world. Basically what I'm...
Now this is rich. Buy COVID vaccines for the entire world. Why the hell would any billionaire want to do that? Especially, talking about Bill Gates earlier in this video. Bill Gates is considered one of these centibillionaires. And Bill Gates has been on a mission for the last decade to bring vaccines into the underdeveloped world, oftentimes to the chagrin of their theocratic overlords. And now you have people demonizing Bill Gates, cooking up conspiracy nonsense about how Bill Gates is actually just doing this for some monetary gain, long-term monetary gain, and population control. But even with Robert Reich, bringing up centibillionaires like Bill Gates, who's been on a mission, and here he is, not showing fucking appreciation. Ungrateful little shit Robert is.
Or buy COVID-19 vaccines for the entire world. Basically what I'm saying is $100 billion is a lot of money. More than 2.5 million times what the average American worker makes in a year. So here's the big question. Are these centibillionaires so rich because they work 2.5 million times harder than the average American?
Now, this is a straw man. This talk about, do they really work 2.5 million times harder than the average American? Not necessarily, but they do create values that are oftentimes millions of times worth more than the average work. Pertaining to Jeff Bezos, he created a business that now serves tens of millions of happily paying customers, moves billions of dollars worth of product, and that's worth more than, say, an Uber driver giving someone a ride to the beach. Not to mention, people have said that Robert Reich charges up to $40,000 for a 1-hour talk. So I guess Robert Reich maybe can explain why 1 hour of his work is worth the same as 1 year of work on a $20 per hour job. But another point that I have to repeat over and over and over and over again when talking about this is that when we talk about the wealth of centibillionaires, much of that wealth is reflected in the market value of their assets, mostly stuff like stocks. In the case of Jeff Bezos, the stocks in Amazon, the company that he created. And when talking about someone like Elon Musk, if you guys remember, Elon Musk, when he was challenged to end world hunger last October, he announced that, I'll be willing to do it, but first he would have to sell $6 billion worth of Tesla shares. Again, what's Robert Reich doing to end world hunger? But let's think this through for a second. In order for these centibillionaires to actually fund the pet causes that Robert Reich talks about in this video, they would first have to sell off their assets, meaning that they would have to find someone who's as rich, has the money to buy that assets from them so that they could take that money and spend it on pet causes like buying medical debt, buying vaccines, Which means what you're ultimately doing is transferring the wealth from centibillionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos to presumably large financial institutions, maybe Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan. And if that happened, then Robert Reich would still probably complain about how the rich own all of this wealth and how unfair it is.
Are they really 100 times smarter than the typical billionaire?
Not 100 times smarter in the sense that they can hold 100 times as much knowledge or that they can score 100 times higher on some IQ test, but again, it's the values they create. Comparing a centibillionaire like Jeff Bezos to a billionaire like Oprah Winfrey, who has more customers right now, Amazon or the Oprah Winfrey Network? But ultimately, this is all for the free market to decide. Not you, Robert.
Personally, I don't think so. The reason for the rise of centibillionaires is that for decades, wealth hasn't trickled down, it's gushed up.
Wealth has not trickled down. Now, I don't really like to fight on the trickle-down economics hill for a variety of reasons. Mainly because, it's not really about economics. And there are a variety of other reasons, but there is some truth to trickle-down economics. And you can see it again with a billionaire who was mentioned in this video, Mark Cuban, who is a recurring guest on the show Shark Tank, which is a show where multimillionaires and billionaires see and hear pitches from entrepreneurs who are looking for investments for their respective company. And a lot of these businesses get the money from the sharks, like Mark Cuban, which then they put into productive use, often creating new jobs, new opportunities, new technology, and new goods and services that the masses benefit from. So yes, a lot of times wealth does in fact trickle down in a sense.
All the way to the very top. And that's not an accident.
Hell yeah, let's explore space. If these guys want to spend money on exploring space, I think that's pretty cool.
As it turns out, the system that the super rich themselves carefully crafted and lobbied for benefits the super rich. And while you may not own more private jets than your average centibillionaire, you probably do pay a higher tax rate.
Now, I think Robert is full of shit here, especially for relying on data, on the stolen data that was reported by ProPublica back in 2021, which is not exactly Fox News or PragerU. But even in this article, the article mentions how many Americans live paycheck to paycheck, amassing little wealth and paying the federal government a percentage of their income that rises if they earn more. In recent years, the median American household earned $70,000 annually and paid 14% in federal taxes. So 14%, according to this article, 14% in federal income taxes. And if you go down here, you'll see that they have this chart, and you'll see the art of the shifting the goalposts here, because they talk about reported income and the taxes paid on that income. But they shift the goalposts from income taxes from income to wealth growth, as you can see, so that they can classify the true tax rate at a much lower rate. When you just look at the total taxes paid compared to their income, the lowest paid was by Warren Buffett at roughly 19%. Whereas Elon Musk, if you look here and run the numbers, he paid roughly 30% of income taxes between 2014 and 2018. So 19 to 30% between these four billionaires. Whereas again, this article says that, Americans at the median household income, they only paid 14%. This is kind of in line with this article from The Balance about the effective tax rate. And if you look at this interactive chart relying on data sourced from the IRS, you don't really get to a 19% until about the $120,000 mark. This is based on income for single individuals. So you don't pay Warren Buffett level 19% income taxes until you make $120,000. But if you make less than that, then no, you are not paying more than these quote-unquote centibillionaires. But there is a lot to be said about the tax code. I think we need to have a flat tax as low as possible with no deductions, no tax credits, a real fair system. If Robert Reich wants a fair system, we'd have a flat tax with no deductions or write-offs. Everyone pays the same rate.
And thanks to legal loopholes and the Trump tax cuts, when the wealthiest Americans die, they get to pass on most of their centibillions to their kids, tax-free.
Now, this is also another lie. Now, it is true that most Americans, from what it looks like, will never pay estate taxes. Let's look at estate taxes. This is an article from the IRS's website, where they talk about the history of the estate tax threshold in 2022. It's currently at $12 million. It used to be lower than that. According to Tax Foundation, the United States currently has some of the highest the highest estate tax rates in the world, tied with the UK at 40%. You know, people like Robert Reich often talk about how we need to become more like social democratic countries in Europe, like France and Norway and Denmark and Sweden. I would say, hell yeah, Sweden. They have 0% estate taxes. You want to be, you guys think Robert Reich wants to be more like Sweden in that sense? This article on Investopedia breaks down the federal estate taxes more easily. On this article from January of this year by Paul Reynolds. Not to mention, there's also the generation skipping tax, which was meant to close the loophole from wealthy Americans passing on their assets to their grandchildren tax-free. But going back to the estate tax rates. So yeah, most Americans probably won't pay estate or inheritance taxes until they reach $12 million. And if you're not good at math, $100 billion is a lot more than $12 million. So yeah, people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, when they have to pass on their assets, their estates to their kids, they're probably going to be paying a lot to the government. As the professional wrestler IRS once said,
later, everyone pays IRS, but now you know firsthand that being 6 feet under is not a tax shelter.
Yeah, it's the same energy I'm getting from Robert Reich. Being 6 feet under is not a tax shelter. Would like to hear why Robert has more of a right to someone's money than their kids do.
We've got two choices as a country. We can tax the richest Americans fairly and invest that money in ways that benefit all of us. Or we can keep doing what we're doing and watch as billionaires get even richer while the rest of us get left behind. If you think wealth and power are too concentrated in the hands of a privileged few now...
And this is what really drives Robert Reich. It's kind of implied in the upper right-hand corner with the watermark inequality media. This is how he thinks policy should be shaped, by reducing material wealth inequality by some arbitrary standard, when the real purpose of government is the protection of individual rights and property rights. Now, I do agree with Robert in some sense in that the current system, the status quo, is not ideal, is not desirable, but if anything, we should be freeing up the economy so that individuals can create as much wealth as they possibly can. And if someone ends up creating a new business, a new technology, and ends up making hundreds of billions of dollars by selling it to happy customers on the free market, then I say, good for them.